Hello. Here's another video. It's going to be semi-controversial. I'm going to try and make it quick. There is a lot of videos, more so recently, multiple videos going around about asking if is no gi catch wrestling, and everybody's giving the short answer of no, but no one really defines what no gi is. And I think it's better to ask the question: is no gi Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And I think that answer is also no. Um, Really, the actual answer for both catch wrestling and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is no gi. Catch wrestling and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, the same answer is sort of yes and no. The rules do dictate the style, the rules will dictate the art. However, the rules do not create the art inherently. As an example, when Josh Barnett competed at Metamoris against Dean Lister, he went in, used catch wrestling, and defeated Dean Lister. His next match was Josh Barnett versus the Gracie at Metamoris. I can't remember which Gracie it was. And does that mean that Josh Barnett's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy going against the Gracie? No, he was using catch wrestling in a no-gi setting, in no-gi, against Gracie, who was using his style of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu versus Josh Barnett's style of catch wrestling. Two different things. Three different things. Catch wrestling, no-gi rule set, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I got some notes here real quick. I'm going to try to make this fast as possible. So you can have styles. You can have a style and it can compete in a different rule set. I've done this, and I'll use this other style. I'll use this other example here. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu can compete in a catch wrestling match, but that doesn't mean that his style is catch wrestling. It means that he's using Jiu-Jitsu and competing in catch wrestling. A catch wrestler can put on the jacket, the gi, and go to a gi jiu-jitsu competition and compete and win. It's happened multiple times for my guys personally, but also there's anyway, it doesn't matter. That means that a catch wrestler is going out there with a jacket and beating jiu-jitsu guys under the jiu-jitsu rule set. So you can use these techniques in different rule sets, but the art is independent from the rule set. The art comes from somewhere. So you got to really ask yourself, what techniques are being used in no-gi today versus in no-gi whenever it was just jiu-jitsu guys that were traditional gi Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys. And it's wildly different. You look 20 years ago to today, wildly different. The biggest change has been leg locks, and if you look into where that kind of came from, you'll eventually get down the rabbit hole and see that Sambo guys are saying that Sambo owes their leg locks to catch wrestling. So a big part of catch wrestling is a big part of the no-gi today is catch wrestling, because a lot of that came from catch wrestling, and a lot of it was innovated. You have a whole style, you have a whole shot that's called the Imanari roll just to get to the legs. And if you really start diving down that rabbit hole, a lot of that stuff really comes from catch. It just is what it is. Let me see here. So I'm going to talk about a match that happened recently real quick, and I'm going to talk about the defining moments in the match. Nicky Rod versus this guy named Duarte. It was at Who's Number One. People are calling it a boring match. There was not, if I break it down, there's probably only like 6 things that happened in the match that was defining. So you had stand-up battles. Eventually, Duarte gets an underhook, does like a takedown maneuver, off balances Nicky Rod. Nicky Rod does not go to his guard. He goes belly down to try to get back up to escape, to keep the wrestling happening. Duarte ends up having a ride on Nicky Rod, rides it, has a really good control. At one point, he has one hook in, has a power half Nelson on Nicky Rod. Nicky Rod can't get up. Nicky Rod eventually gives up his escape attempts, goes to his guard. Duarte pins, doesn't pass the guard, but keeps Nicky Rod pinned underneath him for a handful of minutes. Duarte gets an advantage for the takedown, the riding, and the pinning. Eventually, Nicky Rod kicks Duarte away. They get back to standing. Nicky Rod gets a takedown. Then Nicky Rod proceeds to pin Duarte in a dominant position past the guard for the remainder of the match, and that was the match. That was the entire match. So we got to look not necessarily at the techniques being used, but at the philosophy being used here. If this was the philosophy was takedown, control, pin, ride, pin, escape from underneath, get on top yourself with a takedown, and then pin. That's not so different than catch wrestling philosophy. Philosophy for catch wrestling really is try to get the takedown and control on top. And then if you're underneath, try to escape, reversal, escape, and even submit. But if you look at it, it's more so reverse, escape, be on top, control, and pin. Uh, so what's actually being done, what's being said, and what's being done is kind of two different things now. They'll say that it's Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and there's a longer form debate that can or argument that, and I don't really care, that can be happen from that. But largely, the the philosophy about how to win in no-gi is catch wrestling philosophy and ideology is being superimposed on top strategies for no-gi nowadays. Um, and we'll dive in that at some other point. Um, they'll say that catch wrestling doesn't play off their back, which is not true because catch wrestling really competes in any rule set. There's a story a long time ago where one of my training partners asked Billy how all his guys did really good in submission grappling and MMA, and then also in worked professional wrestling. And he said, he asked Billy, how does your guys all do good in all these different things? And Billy looked at him like he was stupid. And Billy was like, it's all the same thing. So, catch wrestlers, you can play off their back if they have to, or some of them are even specialists at it. Because catch wrestlers will catch a hold where they can within the rule set, and no holds barred and no pin catch wrestling was already a thing. It was already happening in the States before World War One. It was already a thing. There would be judo guys and jiu-jitsu guys in America, and they would go up against catch wrestlers, and they would be in mixed rule set where no holds barred, and catch wrestlers would use submissions and punches and whatever else, and strangles with the jacket, because that's a thing too that was already in Western wrestling. So a lot of the stuff already existed. So World War One and Two happened, but at the time, Mitsuya Maeda, I believe, was touring around America. He eventually ended up touring in Brazil with a carnival, which I believe he was doing catch wrestling, professional wrestling, mix kind of things down in Brazil. And he took the flame that was in America at the time, which was no holds barred, catch wrestling / whatever you want to call it, no gi. Really, essentially, he took the flame that was no gi, no holds barred, MMA, took it and went down to Brazil, and then eventually taught the Gracies with that influence. He obviously was a judo guy or jiu-jitsu guy, but he was very much influenced with the American style of no holds barred. So just real quick, because I want to finish this up, you have a lot of leg locks happening nowadays. Sambo is credited a lot with that. But if you get down to it, Sambo will eventually, if you look into it enough, Sambo will say that it was influenced by catch wrestlers to do leg locks. Let's see. So anyway, I don't really consider no gi that different than what catch wrestling is. So the answer is it different? Yes, because catch wrestling is its own thing, and no gi is kind of a mixed thing. And then you have jiu-jitsu over here. So if you go to a jiu-jitsu gym and learn no gi, you're actually learning no gi jiu-jitsu. However, we don't know where they've learned all that stuff from in the first place. So that style is going to be different than if you go and learn no gi from a catch wrestling gym. But when they compete together, it doesn't look all that different. No gi's kind of its own style now, its own art. And it's not the same as gi, traditional gi Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's just not. And you have catch wrestling over here with, a lot of people will say catch wrestling is different because it has the pin. Yes and no. The pin is not always the deciding factor at what wins a catch wrestling match. The pin is just a controlling position, and a good catch wrestling coach and a good catch wrestling gym will focus on using the pin to win the competitions that their competitors are competing in. And the majority of what catch wrestlers compete in nowadays is MMA. They'll also compete in no-gi submission grappling, but a lot of it's MMA. So a lot of times the catch wrestlers just don't focus on the pin like they used to. So you have anyway. They'll say that catch wrestlers they care so much about the pin that it's not the same as no-gi, which is not necessarily true. But then on the other hand, they'll say that catch wrestlers don't care about positions; they care more about submissions. They don't do position before submission; they'll do submission before position. That's not really true either. You can't have say that they don't care about positions and then they care too much about positions with the pin. It's not the same. So I don't really consider it that much different because I do consider catch wrestling different than jiu-jitsu. I consider jiu-jitsu separate. I don't consider no-gi the same as traditional Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I think there's a lot of wordplay that is changing nowadays that makes people believe that it's the same thing. And it's not the same thing. It's completely different. If you look at what it was 20 years ago versus now, completely different style. They used to make fun of people for doing leg locks. They used to make fun of people for giving up their back, trying to get back to standing. There's just a lot of different stuff that used to happen, and they'll say that, oh, this was always happening. Eduardo Teles was doing the turtle, leg locks were happening, yada yada yada. Dude, sure. However, catch wrestlers were always on this get back to standing, use your legs, like do leg locks thing. It was always a thing. So nowadays, when you look at what no-gi is and what catch wrestling was, especially with no pin catch wrestling, and you compare them, not exactly the same thing, but not as different as people are trying to let you think it is. It's not as different as what people are saying. So really, it people. Okay, here's one last thing. People really that don't have any skin in the game, they'll just say it's all just grappling. It doesn't matter, man. It's all the same thing, man. No, it's not. It matters. You can look at Wing Chun. Wing Chun is a striking art, right? Wing Chun is its own thing. And then that guy can enter into a Western boxing match and use his Wing Chun, which is also striking. They're not the same thing. It's all just striking, man. No, it's not. It's not the same thing. That's not the same thing. The no-gi rules can facilitate multiple styles. What I want to touch on is what no-gi is doing today is not so different than what no holds barred grappling was doing 100 years ago. And a lot of that's catch wrestling. So, and that's really all I got to say. Thank you.